This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
All right, guys. You continue down the hallway. This hallway is also made stone bricks, torch sconces are set down the hallway. Torches are lit. You go down about another 30 feet, and you come to wooden door. It's locked. Jerry, what do you want to do?
I'm going to attempt to pry the door open with my crowbar.
Sounds good. Go ahead and give me a strength check.
Okay. 9.
Nope. You can't even get a good position in the door, right? Like the crowbar doesn't even like wedge in there. It's like the door is so well crafted. Bob, how about you? What do you want to do?
Jeez. So the crowbar didn't work. Well, can I just like throw my shoulder into it? I got a little beef to me. Can I just try and muscle?
Yeah. Just give me. Go ahead and give me a strength check.
Ooh, crap. Yeah, that's no good. That's like a 10.
All right, so like you bounce off the door. Like you don't hurt yourself, but like you just totally bounce off the door and just kind of stagger backwards. Right? It's a little embarrassing.
Ooh, tough door.
So yeah, door's still locked. Jerry,
I will pull that scroll.
Got any other ideas?
Yeah, I'm going to pull out that scroll I found and see. I'm just going to use knock on the door. Might as well use that.
Oh, all right. Yeah, go ahead and give me a roll for that.
21.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, well, that, what you call it? That opens up the door, all right. And when you open it, you see a number of shelves inside the room. There are various bags upon them, some wooden crates, and some baskets. And as you further explore, what you find is that this is a pantry.
Wow.
Pantry, like storage for food shit.
Yeah, so there's like bags of flour and some bushels with some potatoes and stuff.
Why the hell did they lock it?
Well, I mean,
there's got to be something here we're looking for. Let's start sorting through it.
Yeah, why don't you guys give me another roll?
13.
And with that, we have reached the 396th episode of the Misdirected Mark Podcast, where tonight we are talking about failure. And all the things that suck about failure, and yet why it is a necessity in games for the most part. But before we do that, my name is Phil.
My name is Jerry.
And I'm Old Man Logan.
Dun, 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 dun.
How's it going, everybody?
Yeah, how is it going, everyone?
Been a good week so far.
Yeah, what is a good week in in lockdown? What does that look like?
Well, a lot of the things that I've been trying to accomplish over the last couple of weeks have come to fruition work-wise, so things are streamlining. We're getting back into kind of a normal routine at our office, and we no longer have a scarcity of safety supplies. And so everybody has masks, everybody has the gloves. Everybody's back to the normal routine of, staying six feet away. We want to talk about something. We all gather in the bullpen. Everybody sits at a desk 10 feet from each other and just talk. So it's somewhat the normalcy has slid in. And so people are able to get the safety of a routine, and our customers are more comfortable with what's going on. So we're able to help them a lot easier. Like today I had to run down to Pennsylvania to deliver some emergency chemicals. So the customers met me right there at the door. When I got there, I just dropped them off, handed them the page. They used their own pen to sign, and we were done. So it was safe, but everybody was taken care of. So that makes the day-to-day life be less traumatic, I guess.
Yeah.
But not just for me, but for all the people that work with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things are getting back to normal, and when things get back to normal, the stress is a little bit less on everybody. So that's what it is for me, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really good, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still mostly just sheltered at home with my car drives at 4:30 and my outing to Wegmans once a week to find some, to go foraging for food. That's about it. Like, I still haven't really gone anywhere. And I pretty much just, kind of occupy the spaces in my house. I sleep a lot. I take lots of naps now.
Yep.
So, just like at some point, I'm just like, why am I awake? Like, it's like, what's the point? And then I like take a nap and I wake up and then I'm like, okay. I don't know. I mean, work's busy. So, during the work week, it's fine. Like, there's some hustle, but come the weekend, like, there's not a hard delineation between work week and weekend anymore. And I don't know. It's all right. We should talk about one thing real quick. Well, Bob, you tell me, how's lockdown life?
It's pretty much the same as it has been. It's, I take naps too. I was taking them before lockdown, so that's no big difference there. I have, however, run into a bit of an issue. My neck is getting a little cranky, and of course I haven't been taking care of it and doing my exercises and all that shit. But I can't just go to my massage therapist and go, hey, fix this for me.
Nope.
So I'm like, oh, all right, well, I got to baby it for a while, and so that'll be a thing as soon as the world opens up again. I'll be like, I need an appointment. Get me in.
Well, don't worry, because the president is hard at work at prying everything open.
Oh, the president never makes me worry.
We'll leave that alone right there. I'm going to X-card that for the rest of the show. Just leave that right the hell alone. Not for only because we don't really want Phil to go off anymore.
No, we really don't.
You can just follow me on Twitter if you want to see me just go off on a daily basis.
Same
anyway, yeah, Bob's right behind me on
that.
So
one thing.
Let's switch it over to one thing.
Phil, what's your one thing for this week?
My one thing for this week is on spur of the moment. I wound up running Trophy Gold on Sunday. We had kind of a Sunday game group failure. Tony was out. It was a cascading failure, right? Tony was out, then Bob was out, then Glenn was out. And I was like, well, guess I'm not having a game on Sunday. And then Chris is like, Jerry and our game didn't go off. Like, do you want to do something? And I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I guess I'm going to run Trophy Gold. Like, that's happening, which is good because I needed to run Trophy Gold because I'm working on one of the incursions for the Kickstarter, and I wanted to get some time playing the game to get a feel for it. But it was one of those things where when I haven't run a game before, I'm always reluctant to run it the first time. And then once I start running it, I kind of get over it and get comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And then, over time, as I've run it a couple times, I get more comfortable with it. So I was just like, whatever, I'm doing this. So I ran it, had some fun. I definitely need to watch. I need to watch some AP on how it's played. The rules are really light because the rules I think that have been released so far are just the rules that were in Codex, which is the Gauntlets magazine. So it's the equivalent of one of those Dragon magazine games where it's it's super thin on text. And a whole lot of either watch it be played or figure it out, kind of explore it things. So anyway, It wasn't terrible. It was a good start. I actually liked the system. The system is super light. It's very much a story game at heart. You can feel the PBTA and Blades mechanics woven through what few rules there are in the game, and I mean literally a few rules in the game. But yeah, it was okay. It was okay. I'm glad I ran it. It forced me out of my comfort zone. And I actually want to play it a couple more times. This now falls into I will play this 4 times, to see if I, grok it enough to feel comfortable playing it or enjoy playing it. Both of those things.
I would definitely play it again. Like I said, right now, as written, I wouldn't spend more than $1 on it. I think that the game rules need some work, but I think the game itself was fun. And I think it's got some flexibility in it that if it were better described would make it. I'd like to play it a couple more times. I think that it's definitely a game that you need to play multiple times to get a feel for how things work. It's not like a PBTA or D20 game where 5 minutes into playing your character, you know how the rules work and how things go and what your capabilities are. This is a game where it's going to take a little bit to figure out the pluses and minuses of the setting.
I'm hoping the AP will help make running it smoother. I think that if I saw how someone ran it, I think very quickly I could get a handle on how to the procedures around which you play out the individual scenes. The actual mechanics are relatively simple. What's not really in the rules, as the rules exist from the Codex magazine, are the procedures around which you run the game. So I would like to see a little more of the procedure, which would help me.
When you're rolling multiple dice, you pick the highest die when you're in combat, correct?
No, highest 2 dice.
Highest 2 dice.
Mm-hmm.
Your highest 2 dice.
Mm-hmm.
And if either of those comes up to be your wounding modifier, you take damage.
Yes.
If you roll 3 dice, and the die you don't pick as your wounding die is your wounding damage, you don't
still take damage.
You still take damage.
Yep.
So it is a game where the more dice you roll, the more chance you have of getting wounded.
You do, right? So it's not to get too deep into this before we get into the main topic of the show, but the point of it is if you don't kill the thing in the first volley, the likelihood that someone's going to get hurt in subsequent volleys increases, even though your chance of actually defeating it also increases. There's a high incentive, not that you can do too much about it, but your best bet in that fight is to roll high on the first roll and take it down. If it has to go to another roll, somebody's probably going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Now, again, armor negates all damage that you take in a volley.
Right.
So if it comes up and you take 4 damage and you cross off, arm guard, you're fine. Anyway,
cool.
Yeah. We'll discuss it more in length. Like I said, I want to play it more.
It was fun.
It was fun. I enjoyed playing it. It was very much a story game because there was far less in the incursion than what I would like. The incursion did a really good job of empowering me to ad lib everything that we played. And that I thought was really good. The layout of the incursion and the way that an incursion's the adventure for the game. The layout of the incursion really facilitated the style that I suspect you're supposed to run the game in, because knowing those Gauntleteers kind of know that culture of gaming. So I dug that. But we should move on. Bob, what was your one thing this week?
I finished up my rewatch of the MCU. I had an aggressive time schedule for it, though.
Congratulations.
I was watching a ton of movies back to back to back, so.
That is, that's impressive. So all the way through Endgame?
All the way through Far From Home.
Oh, yeah, bravo, sir.
All the way, man. The whole 23 films.
Wow.
And, I've decided that I can't watch Endgame again for a while. I'm a little fragile right now. I mentioned before about my my mortality issues that I'm having right now, and there's a sensitivity to me at the moment, and the emotional beats in that movie, they just hit a little too hard right now.
I'll tell you, the when somebody on Twitter released the that movie clip of Endgame with the audio track of the audience, like, did you see it? Like, they have, the scene with Cap and the hammer. Dude, I teared up. Like, I teared up when I heard it the first time, because I was like, oh yeah, like, I remember a time when I was that happy, right? Like, I remember a time like when, like, we all sat in a movie theater and like just watched it, and like that was like our biggest concern, right? Was like, hanging out watching that movie. And yeah, like I caught myself watching that clip over and over for a while and like tearing up every time I watched it. And then I was like, okay, like, yeah, I get it. Like, fragile is the right word.
Yeah. So that was my past week. I burned through the entire MCU.
That is some heroic work, my friend.
That's awesome.
It would explain why I haven't seen you on Mumble in a while.
There were a couple of evenings where I'm like, oh, I should probably, and I'm like, oh man, I still got like a half an hour left on this movie, and then I'm like, I'm kind of beat too. I'm like, they'll survive without me. I'll catch them the next time.
Yep. Survive, yes. Miss you, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I appreciate that.
And you, Jer, how about you?
We're getting a lot of game stuff. A combination of basically reorganizing my Dropbox, where I've got a lot of PDFs, a ton of PDFs, and I just dumped them all there in assorted folders, and I'm finally going through and sorting folders. Now that I'm doing some stuff with Roll20, I'm finding where all my map PDFs are. I'm finding the literally hundreds of sets of cardboard minis that I've got on there to use as tokens, but also just finding stuff that got stuck, wherever. Like, I've now got a folder of all just one-shot games. I've got a whole folder of one-page games. I've got a whole folder of just traveler things, so on. So I can find things so that as we start doing more and more things online, or somebody says, hey, let's play a game, I can pull something out and play some stuff. And also, it's nostalgia. I want to go back and look at that. I want to go look at some of the games I played back in the late 70s, early 80s, and find the ones that were like Marvel superheroes that was still fun to play back then and still fun to play today. So
I would not mind playing a round of Marvel superheroes. I haven't played it in eons. I still mostly remember the game, but it would be a lot of fun.
That's what I could run for you guys.
Yeah, that would be fun. I would totally
do that.
And I believe that I want to say it was Mark Meredith. I forget. Maybe it was Mark. Maybe it was somebody else. Somebody was on a kick and was making all the MCU characters in face rip.
That's cool.
I vaguely remember that. Yeah, somebody was doing that.
There's a lot of face rip.
When we get to the conversation corner, I'll talk about reading some comic books, because I've been doing that this week. But we should move out of the one thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we have any announcements, so we probably should just mosey our way over to the workshop.
The workshop.
I will ready a cup of coffee in preparation for what will happen after this bumper. Let me know. Workshop! You gotta fail! You're gonna fail, it's okay, but we gotta use it properly. Too much failure, everybody doesn't have a good time. You gotta fail and still have fun. Workshop!
Don't suck.
Ooh. All right, so I was looking through the pins document for the show, came across the word failure. Right, no context to it, just failure.
Just failure.
I don't know if it was an actual show topic suggestion. I don't know if we screwed up the opening one night and just wrote the word failure in there. I don't know what happened, but I was like, cool. We should talk about failure. We've talked about fail forward before, which is definitely a facet of failure. But there are other types of failures in games, which then kind of just got me thinking about the role of failure in general in games.
Well, I think that tonight we're going to talk about how to GM failure in your games, and also look at the different ways you can fail, how to keep the game moving, and because of them, sometimes in spite of the failures that are there to keep the game moving. But first, Phil, want to tell us a little bit about failure?
I do.
Behold! You are in the presence of Demolition Thunder.
So, I can't. Now we go. There we go. We're still working on the hand gestures, my friends.
Yep.
Okay. Failure, for lack of better terms, is the lack of success, right? So in RPGs, it simply means you didn't do the thing that you set out to do, right? You didn't hit the monster. You didn't pick the lock. You did not stop Baron von Badass from getting into his escape pod. You did not prevent the portal to the Dark Ether from opening. Sorry, Jared, those were yours. I am completely off tonight.
Either way.
It's all right.
All right. So
Keep going.
I'm on a roll. There are basically two ways in a game that you can fail.
First of all, you can fail narratively, which means that the story did not achieve the goal you set out to do. And you can also fail mechanically, which means that a given check or challenge didn't produce the success result.
Yeah, and truthfully, right, narrative failure is often a mix of narrative choices and mechanical results, right? So that, we could choose to let the NPC into a sensitive area and be betrayed, right? That's a type of failure that actually may not have required any mechanics, right? It might have just been like, sure, the Baroness seems fine, right? And then there's mechanical failure when the mechanics of the check do not produce a success.
It also means that with games with randomizers, you can often see the results of a bad roll or a bad card draw. In a game without randomizers, it's often determined by some kind of algorithm or procedure that ends up generating a failure.
Yeah, like if you look at Amber Diceless, the game is diceless, has no randomizer. But in general, when you have to face off against somebody, be it arm wrestling, sword fighting, or whatever, you just compare attributes, and whoever's the higher wins, right? So whoever the higher is going to be successful, whoever the lower fails. And it's pretty binary. Like, there's some narrative positioning you can do for some wiggle room, but not a ton. But that's just simply a thing the algorithm of the game tells you how to determine success and failure. All right. So,
Phil, why is failure necessary?
Yeah, the potential for failure creates anxiety around the potential for success, right? So if everything was just going to succeed, right, there wouldn't be any real excitement, right, about like rolling dice or making checks. So failure creates a bit of anxiety for us. And that anxiety creates physiological responses in us as players, right? GMs also being players, right? So GMs make rolls from time to time too, depending on the game. That physiological response also bleeds into characters, right? So characters can have these gritty resolve moments. Like I know many times playing Dungeon World in the Airy Peaks. I put Corin's life on the line a number of times, and down to some, shifty dice rolls, like fighting the, I forget what he was. Was he like the 7th greatest swordsman in the world?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, something like that. And that was literally like, if you don't pass this roll, you're dead kind of thing, right? So I definitely was ramped up about that. And that translated into Corin being very tense and resolved as well. The more likely failure is, the more anxiety it will generate, right? The higher the stakes are for what happens if you fail, the more anxiety is generated. Like if you've only got one turn to stop Baron von Badass before he gets into the escape pod and escapes forever, but it's going to be down to this die roll whether you can throw your throwing knife into the control panel right before he gets, before the door opens. There's a lot riding on that, and you will feel that anxiety. So that anxiety creates a level of focus and emotional investment in the game, right? Like we all know, like when you get into a tense fight and hit points are running low, or a Savage Worlds game where almost everyone's out of bennies in a fight, like everybody starts leaning into the table. Everybody starts watching every die roll. Everybody starts, either loudly or quietly cheering for successes and, for the, for your side and failures for the other side. So that all gets us into, this like really heavily emotional investment, and that will do a lot for a game, right? Because those heavily invested moments are when we imprint and remember things about the game the most, right? Like we all remember we all remember a saving throw that we just made or just missed. I will never forget playing the Airy Peaks where Tony had fumbled summoning Gakkus the Lightning Hand, and I took it from him, and I ran up and, charged the Wyvern with it and discharged it, and Chris was like, cool, roll 2d12, you're taking the higher of, I don't remember, I think it was roll 2d12. It
was 3d12, add them together.
Right, 3d12 and add it together, and I was like, oh, I'm dead, right? Like, I've only got like 12 hit points. I rolled, and I think I got like a 4.
Yeah, it was
right, and
it was like 4 or 5 points. Yeah,
I mean, I jumped up. I was like, yes, like he is invincible, right? Like, yeah, like I'll never forget the moment of like cheating death like that, right? So, but that failure has to be there in order for those successes to be so delicious, right? Okay. That's and my soapbox about why failure is necessary.
Right.
Thierry, you want to tell us about some types of failure? Because not every failure is quite the same.
No. Basically, failure is going to be essentially a lack of success, and they're not all the same. And most of this has to do with the stakes that are out. We've talked about stakes before, and if you go back to episode 281, we defined stakes, and those are the consequences of a situation or check or roll. What do we have to gain or lose? This means that all failures are failures, but not all consequences are the same. So when you pair these together, you can create all sorts of different situations. So Phil, tell us a little bit about a simple failure.
Yeah, the simple failure is when the stakes are fairly binary, right? Or not interesting, right? Like the do or do not. And our opening was kind of an example of this, right? Like picking a lock when nothing else is going on. Yeah. Right. And to be honest, this is like the worst kind of failure because it is absolutely boring, right? My recommendation is that as GMs, you should, if you find yourself about to call for this role, as in nothing interesting is going to happen, there are no interesting stakes for success or failure, don't, right? Just, let the player do the thing they were saying and move on, right? Because there's just nothing interesting about it. Now, so let me just say that that's the, that is, there is one caveat to that, right? The caveat to that is combat, right? So combat often is a simple failure, right? A hit is you either hit or miss, right? That's very binary. The stakes can be fairly high depending on what you are hitting and what you are missing. But simple failures are very common in combat, and it's just that we have I want to say quick turnaround, but I've also played Pathfinder. I was going to say a quick turnaround from turn to turn for us to try again, but in theory, the idea with a simple failure is you try, you fail, you try again. So that's the simple failure. Tell me about
Pathfinder, and I would raise you GURPS.
Oof. I see your GURPS and raise you champions.
I want to see your champions and raise you GURPS again.
That's fair. GURPS champions.
I call your GURPS. I call your champions.
I fold.
Wise choice.
That was good. All right, tell me about the stymie.
All right. The stymie is what occurs when the failure is an action that not only fails, but failure just stops the game from progressing. So, for example, in order to find the criminals, you have to decipher the encrypted text message, and you don't. Or, you need to open this door, and nobody has the skills available. Nobody finds the clues. Nobody can make the notice check. All those things will just stymie the game and stop it where it is. And this type of failure often happens way too often in games that have mysteries or investigations. And it's a problem because it just causes all the progress in the game to break down completely. And this is why, in a lot of games, especially more modern games, the stymie gets converted over to
the fail forward, right? The fail forward is the better, like, the fail forward is the solution for the stymie, right? Mm-hmm. It's where the action succeeds, but the stakes fail as the consequence for the action, right? So, going back to your example of decrypting the criminal's text message, right? If you fail, you still decrypt the message, but you get there after the criminals have left the scene, right? So there'll be clues in the scene for you to try again to catch up with them. But if you had succeeded in that check, you would have arrived at the scene when the criminals were like in mid-crime, right? And then like that's a very different, that puts you in a very different place, right? So in which case, what's not in question is whether you will decrypt the message or not. You will. What's different is which stake gets attached to it. Again, 281, we tore this whole thing on fail forward apart to look at it. So I don't want to go into super detail about it, but yeah, it is definitely a thing. Sorry, I'm a little thrown off because I think one of my children are in the basement when they're not supposed to be.
Oh no.
You're not being really stealthy. Well, come. Oh, boy.
She has mastered the art of moving so slowly.
Welcome to live podcasting, folks. Come here.
Is that Drax the Destroyer?
Yeah, it is Drax. You may know her from the. All right, you go upstairs. But you're not. Go upstairs. Folks, man, we're 5 weeks into this, man. Like,
yep.
This is my everyday at work. My everyday at work. Welcome. It's like no different here. That was my daughter, by the way, not being super stealthy. All right. So, sorry for the distraction.
That's all right.
Okay.
So, fail forwards.
Fail forward. It is absolutely critical, right? Stymies are about the worst. If I wasn't a fan of the simple failure, the stymie is actually worse than the simple failure, right? Like the stymie is awful. There is nothing worse than an 80s or 90s investigation game where literally like, oh, you failed to find the clue.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Like, nothing else. That you failed to find the clue. That's all.
Yep.
Good luck on the adventure. Right? To me, this is where, like, Call of Cthulhu and its later versions have gotten a better hold of this. This is where Trail of Cthulhu and, Gumshoe was essentially Robin Law's, answer to how to fix stymies in investigations.
Yep.
Right? So, like, we get much, like, modern game technology has gotten much better at this. The fail forward is your better state. Okay. Anyway, so on to the challenges that failures create. Right? So while the possibility of failure is needed to make a game interesting, actual failures in games can sometimes create problems that GMs have to manage. And so we'll go through a few of these examples. The first one for me is meaningless failures, right? This is when we were talking about before about simple failures, right? This is where a simple failure occurs that has no real stakes, right? This can just be annoying. And our opening of the show, right? That thing about the door, that actually happened to me in a Pathfinder game, right? The GM was running this adventure, like whoever wrote it, like, the pantry door was locked with like a DC 15. And I failed this thing like 4 times to open the door. Finally got the door open to find out it was a freaking pantry. And there was no consequence for failing 4 times. The guards didn't show up. There was no wandering monsters. And there was nothing good in the pantry.
All it did was waste time.
Yeah, all it did was waste time and get us annoyed, right? So
yeah.
Those failures are a real problem in a game, and they can, like, you know, poorly written adventures just have these things baked into them.
Mm-hmm.
So they are definitely a problem. Jared, we touched on it before. Tell me, like, stymies, man, right? Stymies are a problem like this.
Listen, we mentioned these. They're what a failure just halts the game, and you have to have a success to proceed, or the game doesn't go anywhere. And this is going to create frustration in the players because they become stuck in the narrative, and you said they're at the mercy of the dice. They can't roll well enough. They don't have what they need. And they get fed up with just rolling over and over and over again. And it's often really boring to wait till it's passed. And it takes us way out of story mode. At this point, the players are focusing on the mechanics of the game, just trying to figure out how to get that roll or get that value that they need to succeed. And while it can lead to teamwork as they try to squeeze every last point of bonus out of whatever they can, they'll take them completely out of story mode and basically slows the game down to a crawl. And sometimes it makes players decide they just don't want to play that game anymore. And this can lead to
hopelessness, man.
Yeah.
Like, there are just times where you get into situations in the game where it doesn't seem like anything you can do makes a difference, right? Every action you take fails. And this could be the direct result of a stymie, right? This is like a failure in the this is like a failure in the construction of the adventure, right? Where we have the locked pantry, right? Nobody can get into it, and when you do, there's nothing there. It can also occur when you have something like a monster with a ridiculous high AC, where just like literally everything the players are trying is just bouncing off this thing. A lot of times this is the result of a misapplication or misunderstanding of game mechanics. It could be that the GM overlooked, a bit like this thing's actually vulnerable to something. It can sometimes be that the players have not gotten a clue, right? Like maybe there were hints like, oh no, this thing is only vulnerable to fire. But like that didn't get conveyed very well. And we've talked about conveying clues and the challenges of that, right? Especially so if the GM is trying to purposely be subtle, right? Like, oh, you didn't pick up on my clue about the mosaic with the fire, right? And the players are like, no. Meanwhile, like this thing is like stomping all over the players, right? And unable to stop it. What ultimately happens is that hopelessness and frustration if it doesn't resolve, it turns into like reckless play or passive aggressive player actions, right? Like, they can just like players will just be like, well, if that didn't work, like I'm going to set myself on fire and throw myself at it. Right. Like it's the signs that like players are getting more and more upset with the game because they can't figure out what's happened. It can also create, outside of a scene, it can also create changes in terms of like long-term player choices. Right, Jer?
Yeah. This is not a GM problem, but some games have built into them things that players have no control over. My big pet peeve, and some of my players and GMs will know about this, is I hate any spell that is the opponent gets to make a save, and if they save, nothing happens. Classic example is Hold Person. I'm in a D&D game now. I have Hold Person. I've had it for about 9 weeks. It has never been successful to cast. I stopped casting it. So as a player, I don't take any spells that allow the opponent to take a save for nothing. I don't care about save for half damage is fine, but if they make their saving throw and nothing happens, I don't bother with those spells because there's nothing I can do to make it work better. So there's nothing more frustrating than casting a spell and nothing happening. So
I think
that's another failure.
I agree, right? Like I totally agree. Like, why as a player would I take a resource that if the GM's having a hot night or a good run of dice, I just waste the resource and my turn, right? So, I mean, we're talking about D&D, so we're talking about a game with hit point attrition, right? So the more turns something is left living hitting us, the greater chance one of us won't live, right? Like, why would I not take something that even essentially fails forward, right? Fireball fails forward.
Yep.
I throw the fireball, everybody makes a reflex save. And if they save, they take half damage. That's a fail forward. Now, there are, rogues and things like that who can evade, and that's fine. That's a resource they got kind of thing. But I'm with you. Like, I think a hold person is dumb like that, right? Why couldn't you just get like a minus, like the person gets a -2 to their attack because, they had to
disadvantage.
Yeah.
Disadvantage.
We don't do -2 anymore.
Okay, yeah. Well, I don't play 5e, but you're only making my case for why not. But anyway, yeah, like they get disadvantage on their next attack because they either had to spend a whole lot of concentration to resist the effect, or their body's like all jarred because of it. It almost got locked in place. Like, that would be cool, and I would take that spell then.
Now I want to specify that because I said the GM rolled the dice. This is not a problem with the GM at all. This is just a mechanical problem.
It's the randomizer, right?
I just want to make sure that I specify that GMs who have these spells in their games, this is not a problem with the GM. It's just a problem with the mechanics of that particular type of spell. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be honest, because Anne's just saying it in the room, right? That hold person's a really powerful spell. Hold person falls into a agency depriving kind of spell. And that level of spell, agency depriving spells are problematic in numerous ways.
Yes.
Bob, you should put that onto
agency depriving
mechanics.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. Ding.
That's definitely a thing, right? That's because Anne's just right. If hold person gets cast on you.
Yeah. You should have
you will not enjoy it.
No.
Okay. So no doubt.
I've spent multiple games watching the fight from the sidelines. So for several turns. So it's an effective spell. But yeah, that's just my example. There's a thing about picking spells. So I don't ever pick spells that allow that kind of thing anymore.
Yeah, I think that's just good optimization, right? I'm picking spells that no matter what happens. And you know what? It's not even based on your role in that case, right? So It's not even like, it's not even based on a role that you can influence or optimize. It's literally just the GM role. And it's like you said, it's not the GM's fault. It's just like the GM picks up dice, rolls them, and is like, nope, move on. Okay. So that's hopelessness. What about just having a bad night?
I think that's going to be bad luck. And there are times when a player just has a run of bad luck rolls and they can't achieve anything. I think we've all been there. If a game has a fail forward mechanic, that's okay though, because it's not as much of a problem because their dice are going to be horrible. At least the story's progressive. But if the game leads on simple failures, this is going to end up resulting in a lot of frustrations. Nothing gets done.
So I had a night where Bob was running 4E. So first of all, now you know how long ago this was. Bob was A, running a game, and B, it was 4E. I had a night that had nothing to do with Bob, where no matter which die I picked, and I picked many of them out of my dice, could not roll 2 digits. Everything I rolled was single digits the entire night. So much so that I recorded all of them in a spreadsheet because statistically I was like, no way should anyone's dice suck this bad.
I thought that was in the Pathfinder game when we were playing Kingmaker.
No, I think that was 4E, man. I was like...
Because in 4E, you guys were cleaning up the joint 99% of the time.
We were, but I mean, I had one bad night, but luckily the rest of the party was so fucking powerful that, like, my one bad night just, like, it got absorbed because I think Brian was massacring everything as our ranger. But, like, that string of bad luck as a player, man, sucks. Rough. It is rough. And it's not the GM's fault. And it's not really the player's fault. It's just like you got to run a bad dice and it happens. Like it just sucks. So this is why I have a strong preference for games that have mechanics that mitigate failure. So things that have like bennies and fate points and cipher XP points or whatever. Because if I have a mechanic that allows me to, that empowers me to change this failure to a success, even if it doesn't, right? So like if I miss and I'm like, cool, I'm spending an XP point, I'm going to roll and I'm going to re-roll, and I roll again, then I'm like, I know you've done it, Bob. I've seen you spend more than one Benny.
Oh, yeah.
Just be like, I'm going to spend a Benny to re-roll this. Fuck that. I'm spending another Benny to re-roll this, right? And like, I will now take this result, right? So that mitigation helps a lot. The Cypher XP thing we talked about when we did our exploratory play of Numenera.
Yep.
Like, you have to make a decision. Like, am I okay failing this roll because I want the XP to level up? Or is in this moment spending that XP better? I'm better off spending that XP now to defeat this monster, find this thing, disarm this, whatever. And what it does is it shifts that choice of failure onto the player. Because if I decide I'm going to fail this roll because I want to keep my XP to level up, I don't have anyone to be mad at, right? I had the choice to attempt to fix it, but I made the choice not to. So that's that. Now, I will say another game that really knocks this out of the park is Dungeon World.
Yeah.
Dungeon World has two things that address this. First of all the moves have hard moves have a fail forward mechanism, right? GMs can do a variety of things when a player fails a roll. Damage is almost at times the least interesting of them, although sometimes necessary based on the narrative. But in addition to like a GM, a player who's having a shitty night and a bad run, the GM can, instead of just pounding them into the ground with damage, can, drop them through a hole and send them on a new adventure, by separating them from the party, whatever. But in addition, you get experience points. And I remember having some shitty nights with Corin where I didn't roll. I don't think I rolled anything better than a 7 the whole night, but I leveled up.
Yep.
Right. And it was like, well, I got my ass handed to me for the night, but I also leveled up. So overall a win. Like it's just I think Dungeon World does a really neat job of that. It gives the GMs a little latitude to decide how hard they want to turn the screws on the players. And at the same time, gives the players a delicious little XP point. Like, sorry, your roll was bad, but here, have this consolation snack. So
it's one of the things I liked about the 5e version of Eberron is that you get the advantage of both the D&D 5e inspiration, which we hand out like bennies, which allow you to reroll, and also the hero points, which you can use to add to your D20 roll, or spend for other Benny-like mechanics. In some cases, I've played with GMs who are just, everybody make a perception check. Oh, nobody noticed it. So do you want to spend a hero point? Okay, you find this. It's a spendable resource. How long has it been since we've talked about spendable resources?
Long enough. We should put it on the list.
Put a pin. Because that has come up in a couple of... I play a lot of games with that, and one of the things I've seen is when GMs offer you that, well, that'll happen for a Benny, and you're like, nah, I'll keep my Benny. I'll take the failure. And that's a different topic, but how to balance that, when is the failure fun to keep kind of thing. So. Yeah,
I mean, the other one that I would mention that's very similar to that is DCC luck.
Yeah.
Do you want to spend a luck point for that? Right? Like, in the funnel, before you have classes that have different effects with luck, spending luck is like, well, this is all the luck your character's basically getting for the rest of its career. Do you want to spend some of it now? Probably not. Unless this is a one shot and then you're like going to ride it like it stole it.
Yeah.
When you get classes and you have, lucky halfling or a thief who can spend luck and get it back, sometimes it's different. But for instance, I don't know if you remember this, Bob, but fighters can spend a point of luck to negate a fumble.
I did not remember that.
I know you guys got to go read those rules a bit more. But a fighter can spend a point of luck to negate a fumble. Like you still miss,
but you don't fumble.
Right. So the question then becomes, in a big fight, especially if you're heavily armored because you roll with the big die, do you want to take the fumble? Or do you want to spend a point of luck
Now,
and just miss.
Can a halfling spend a point left for the fighter?
I don't know. That's worth checking.
All right. Now that we've talked about all these, remember that as an experienced gamer now, while some games lack these mechanisms, some GMs have to take a more direct hand in managing these frustrations that these failures are going to cause. And that's something I think we'll talk about in the second segment.
I think you are right. So let's check in with the chat room. They look to be chatty and get their thoughts about failure. But first, Bob, will you tell us about another show on the Misdirected Mark Network?
Absolutely. Jianghu Hustle. Train alongside fellow students Eric Farmer and Eli Kurtz in Jianghu Hustle. Eric and Eli make their kung fu stronger by watching wuxia films, then discussing how to apply their observations to game design. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe they're going to be doing a watch party of Mortal Kombat
on Thursday at 8 p.m. while we're playing DCC.
Oh no!
I know. I was like, I saw it. And let me just say, I'm almost willing. Like, I'd almost be willing to cancel a DCC game to see them do Mortal Kombat. Yeah. It's not quite high enough threshold. If they do Gymkata, I will cancel a DCC game.
Yes.
Yeah, we'd have to sit in on that one.
To be clear, if they will do a watch party on Gymkata, I will cancel DCC to make room for. I will cancel any game in my stable to watch them watch Gymkata.
All right, the gauntlet is thrown.
That's thrown. I love those guys. I'll have to mention it to Eric on Friday. When he joins us for lunch. So how's our chat room doing?
Yeah, so they've been having quite the discussion about the classic all or nothing type spells from both perspectives, from the GM's perspective and from the player's perspective. It's again, as Ange pointed out, statistically, throwing hold person should work every once in a while at the very least. But it just happens that Chris has been on a run of good saving throws when Jerry tries to use it. So Jerry's like, it's not getting me anywhere. So, let's just put that off to the side and do something else.
It's also the fact that put this in there. It's the fact that I'm a bard, and so the only offense spells I have are all or nothing spells. Things like, Vicious Mockery, things like that. They're all spells. The only offensive spells I really have are all spells that if the opponent makes a save. So they've had some really good points that there's a difference between all or nothing and save or die.
Oh, yeah.
And it's also about picking your targets.
Yep.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, and it's going to depend on, even if you have a nice variety of spells that you can use, it depends where you are in the fight. If you've been going at it with a group for a while, you may be starting to run low. If you've just gone through an encounter and then you get the surprise wandering encounter, your resources may be down. You may not have those options. So there's a lot of mitigating factors in it. It's a balancing act, and it's going to vary moment to moment and table to table. But yeah, it's just some people really enjoy that all or nothing, save or die type thing, and other people not a huge fan. I'm personally not a fan of all or nothing. Save or die, not a huge fan either, but all or nothing is worse for me because it's save or die usually comes in at the higher levels. All or nothing is kind of spread out all over the place.
So, save or die comes when die is more of an inconvenience and less of a... Well, I mean, it's just a resource drain, right? So it's like, finger of death, you die. And then it's like, well, cleric, go spend a spell slot and bring me back. Like, it really is like you should just cut out the middleman and just charge the cleric a spell slot. Like, just cleric, you lose your spell slot.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I agree with Bob, right? Like, save or die is save or die becomes a thing at certain levels of play, right? Like, I don't know the 5e curve and I don't remember it for 4e, but like at 3.0, like 12th level is And I remember the designer saying this once at a panel at Gen Con, like above 12th level, you're more likely to die from failing a saving throw than you are by losing your hit points.
Yeah.
Which then you're just like, which is why like at 10th level, I sabotage and self-destruct all of my D&D games.
Yeah.
I have a particular love for a range of D&D, and then above that, above it, it's either too complex or I'm bored, and below it, it's too gritty and I don't like it. Like 3 to 10 is what I would consider. 3 to 10 is what I consider a real sweet spot for D&D.
Now, that being said, the more I think about this, is also a personal thing for me. I think because I'm. It's also the gambling thing. Like, I don't gamble because I don't like games of chance where I don't have control over the results.
Yeah,
so
me too.
So
yeah.
That's why I don't like Texas Hold'em, because it's not really about playing the cards. It's about playing the other people. You don't have control over your hand at all. I don't like games like roulette and blackjack because you have no control over the gambling in those either.
So I'm gonna.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Less control.
I get what you're saying. I think certain games have more. Like, I know why. Like, I like poker. Not that I'm exceptionally good at it, but I like poker for just the reason you said. Right? Like, I could have complete garbage in my hand, but if I can play it well or play it strong, I could keep going. Roulette to me is one of those ones where it's like, I just like throw money down like it's probably gone. It's like a slot machine to me, right? Like slot machines is another one I hate, right? I hate slot machines because that's there's nothing going on there. Anyway, I get your point though, right? And I am also not a fan of gambling for both my control issues and two, having grown up poor, like the potential of losing money for the high of winning money, as opposed to going and just buying something tangible, has never appealed to me. Like, I would like, if given $30, I would like to just go buy a book, please. Not potentially make more money, but no, probably just lose your $30.
Yeah.
Yep.
The other thing they brought into the game was a discussion of games with long combat rounds. And Rollmaster was brought up. Champions was brought up. Space opera was brought up.
Yep.
Space opera. Wow.
Yep. All good games. I don't know how long combat rounds. Rollmaster seemed to be fairly quick combat rounds.
Unless you critted.
Even if you critted, it was just another dice roll. It wasn't. Rollmaster didn't have complicated movement rules and things like that.
What I love is that Forbidden Lands has borrowed from Rollmaster and has these tables for when you break someone. So when they run out of hit points, you roll on this table. But Bob's character has this feat that no matter when he hits you, you roll on this table. And the amount of additional damage Bob does, limbs coming off.
Tiergar is a beast. Rolling twice on the crit table is fun.
Yes. I did not play enough Rollmaster to remember it.
Never played it.
I played MERP. I played Middle Earth.
Yeah. If you played MERP, the difference between MERP and Rollmaster is that Rollmaster just had board charts. The trick to playing Rollmaster is create your characters in Rollmaster, but use the MERP critical hit charts and combat charts.
I mean, they didn't call it Chartmaster for nothing.
Yeah. I mean, the MERP charts, all the MERP charts you need to play fit on 4 pages. Your to hit rolls, your armor rolls, your weapon efficiencies, and your crits are all on 4 pages. And if you just use the Rollmaster game and just substitute in the MERP charts, you can run it very quickly.
Mo is saying the exact same thing Jerry's saying in the chat room at like almost the exact same time.
Yep. Yeah. I have both, and I love them. But yeah, GURPS was second-by-second combat, and it was a hex-based game where you had 6 movement points. Turning one hex side was a movement point.
Oh
no, thank you.
you generally played one combat every other game because once combat started, that was it for the next 6 hours. So,
I mean, that's how my higher level Iron Heroes games were. That was 3rd edition. And like that game when I think went out to like 18th level. And like after 14th level, we only ever had one combat in a game. Like, well, we're going to fight. Like, break out the battle mat.
Mo just mentioned a really good one, the FASA Star Trek game.
Oh, yeah. The first of the Star Trek games.
The second of Star Trek games.
Was there one before it?
Yes, Heritage Miniatures had a Star Trek game first.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. But the FASA game was really important because, as Mo said, it's an action point game, but it was a lot like Artemis in that when you were in a space battle, everybody had to do things. The captain was in charge of getting more action points. The engineer was in charge of generating them and allocating them. The science officer got efficiency out of them. The navigator used them to move. The gunner used them to shoot. And the communications officer used them to do things. So in a space combat, is the first role-playing game I played where every turn in space combat, everybody got to do something that mattered. And we went away from that, and they've come back to that with games like Fantasy Flight, Star Wars, and things like that. But FASA, for all of its issues, was a really great game for playing where everybody got to do something during space combat, not just the pilot and the gunner. And I thought that was really cool.
Yes. I remember I ran FASA Star Trek for a little bit. Jason Pitt's talking about Ken Hite worked on both versions of Star Trek. He worked on, I believe, Lug Trek and Decipher Trek.
Yes, he did.
Which I just boxed up Decipher Trek the other day when I was cleaning my gaming shelf. Ken's got a really interesting story. If you ply him with a drink or two, he'll tell you the story about how the development team from Lug Last Unicorn Games became the development team for Decipher. Like, that all happened at a Gen Con very quickly. I've heard the story before. It's interesting, and if you hear Ken tell it, it's Ken interesting because he is not, if anything, entertaining. Yeah. So yeah, I'm still just because I'm watching Picard right now. I'm still curious about the Modifius Star Trek because my Trek nerd is stirring, and the thought of running a Trek game could be a lot of fun. It could be brutal on players, though. I'm afraid that I will want to play it to Trek. Like, yeah, I'm afraid that I'll just be like, no, you're doing it wrong. Like, it is the only thing I have to kind of contend with is like my Trek nerd might lose it. So
I would play that game.
Yeah, I'm with Jason on this. He wants to play a Trek game during the Enterprise C era. That's a great.
Oh, yeah.
Which one is that? Which is Enterprise C?
The Enterprise C is the Enterprise that gets, if I remember this correctly, because D is the one from Next Gen.
Yes.
So C is the one that's destroyed, that leads to the Khitomer Accords, which is the peace between the Klingons and the Federation. So the only time you ever see the Enterprise C is in my favorite Star Trek episode ever, Yesterday's Enterprise, where it accidentally falls through a hole in time and appears in front of the Enterprise D. And it is such a good episode.
Very good.
Who's the captain?
Wait. I know the helmsman because that's Callisto, that's Lieutenant Callisto or whatever. He becomes the acting captain Castile in the last few minutes. But what is her name?
Garrett.
Oh, Captain Garrett.
Is it Garrett?
It sounds right. Now I'm going to look because. All right, we're going to just we're holding up the show here because now I need to know.
Garrett, yes. Rachel Garrett.
Rachel Garrett, yes.
Yes. Yeah, that was a great episode.
She gets killed in action, though.
Yeah. Spoiler.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, yesterday's Enterprise is easily my favorite Star Trek Enterprise, and I could at some point nerd out and probably do the other 9 that go in that top 10, which includes Cause and Effect and
good stuff,
and a few others. Anyway, good stuff. All right, we should
move back into the topic.
Over. Yeah. All right, so back on the topic of failure, right? Let's kick off our roundtable discussion with the following question. On the GM side of the screen, how do you help manage failure in the games that you run?
Well, what I'm trying these days to don't run any encounters where a die roll can keep you from finding the clue or the MacGuffin. Avoid any save or die situations. That's why I'm not a big fan of instant death traps. And that's been something for a long time. I've always hated Grimtooth's traps as a GM. Well, we'll get to that. Plan ahead of time, though, for what to do if everybody fails or notice check. When you're designing an adventure or playing an adventure that's always written, figure out what's going to happen if they don't make this dice roll. And basically set the encounters up so that failure doesn't automatically mean the game stops. It just changes direction a little. And lastly, feel free to use useful NPCs, partial information, use things like captured but not hopelessly imprisoned instead of death. You know, rocks fall, but now everybody's just trapped in a cave-in. They're not dead. That kind of thing.
Right.
So, Phil, how about you?
Yeah, so mine fall along the same lines as yours, right? So the first one I think that is crucial is stake setting, right? Even if your game is primarily based on simple failure, you can actually, and we talked about this in our stakes episode, you can always define a role however you want to define it and change the stakes to make fail forward situations, right? The picking the lock doesn't have to be the role to actually pick the lock. It can be the role to pick the lock before the guard patrol comes.
Yep.
Right. It's the same. It's still a success or failure. You reframed it with different stakes.
Yep.
And that, I think, in terms of turning simple failures into something more interesting, I think that reframing stakes is critical. I'm going to echo what Ange says in the chat room, which is do not put your plot behind a needed success.
Yep.
Like that is the definition of a stymie, right? Like you, and I will say this, that if you are writing your own investigations, those are a hard type of adventure to write well. You really have to think about how, you have to think both of how finding the clues will progress the story forward, as well as not finding certain clues, right? Now, I personally, like, if I'm going to play a heavy investigation game, I would go right to Gumshoe, right? Like, I don't even want to mess around. I think Gumshoe does investigation games probably the best I've ever seen. Having run Knights Black Agents, the simplicity of just being able to be like, you walk in the room, here are the clues, right? Do you want to spend a point and get secret extra bonus clue? Awesome, right? Now, cool, go do something with those clues, right? Which is the far more interesting part of the story. But yeah, if you are, at any point, you've put your plot behind a success check, it's just a problem. I like that modern games do a much better job of this. Like I mentioned Gumshoe, but the other thing is Tales from the Loop and Things from the Flood outright tell you that failure cannot stop the progression of the Mister. Like they help you with that, right? They help explain what that means, but they're like, just this exact thing. Like the kids can't fail a roll and grind the game to a halt. So I think those two things for starters, right? Setting stakes and setting stakes and, structuring your plots to avoid single point failure, I think are important. The other one is sometimes if a player's if a player gets really stuck, like they can't hit anything that night, like trying to encourage them to think of other ways, like, okay, fighter, like you haven't been able to hit anything tonight, but you know what? If you can go help flank things, then the rogue can sneak attack them. right? Like just, or, you can, whatever talents you have, like getting them to think beyond just like whatever it is. You can't roll to hit tonight. Cool. Let's find something else for your character to do. Or think about some other things for your character to do so that, you can help contribute, right? Because as bad as failing is, the worst feeling is if you feel inconsequential in a scene, right? So if I could be like, well, I can't roll over a 9 tonight, but I keep setting up other players to, pull down cool moves or monsters or whatever. I'm still effective even if my dice aren't behaving. And then lastly, and I will say this, in games that do not have either fail forward or a player-based way to control failure. So I will cite 3.5 D&D. I have fudged rolls. I'm not advocating fudging rolls, but I have done it. I have done things where I've been like, I go to roll for that save and it's the 9th time Jerry's cast hold person. And I'm like, I roll like another 19 behind the screen and I'm like, and you hold them. I've done it. I've done it before.
Yep.
I've say what you will. My way to fix this problem is I just don't play games like that anymore. Right. Mm-hmm. If a game doesn't have fail forward and it doesn't have a way for a player to mitigate failure and success, I just don't play those games for this exact reason, because if no one's in control of it and no one can steer failure and it's just simple fail, 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 pass, 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 I don't like it's not my preference of games. So, and I have definitely in the past fudged dice. You will know that I don't do it anymore because I roll nearly all my dice out in the open. But in my earlier days of GMing, I kept my dice behind the screen for just that reason, that when the game system failed me to help make the game interesting, I helped myself.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There, I have said it. So it is written.
Before we go on to the second question, I want to throw a little corollary in here for you two being the primary game masters at this triumvirate. Senda had made a comment about one of those all or nothing spells where she ended up sitting for an hour during a combat doing nothing.
Oh, yeah.
If you're the GM, like, what would you do if that happened and a player was sitting there and you're like, you don't want a player sitting for an hour doing nothing.
Oh, the spell runs out.
Yeah. The spell runs out.
Make a check, as the spell runs out.
Yep. Either that or the next hit on the spellcaster that casts a spell causes them to drop the spell.
There you go. Yeah.
Do something. Or if there's a tertiary NPC that's just like sitting there watching, they come over and do something so the player's back in the story again.
Be proactive and try and get that player back in the. That's exactly what I would do, because there's nothing worse than having a person sit there with that frustrated look on their face and they're like doing nothing and you know it's going to last.
Yeah.
Mitigate.
Yeah, it's not fun. That's not, I mean, and again, I'm not saying like coddle players and not have fun, but like, look, if a player's failed a few rolls and they've been benched for a while, like their consequence in the game has been paid. Yeah. Like let them off the hook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And more games have that available now. So that's, do something. Before we move on, one more thing. The Queen brought up something important. No red herrings.
Yeah, man, listen, I am, I'm a staunch advocate for investigation games. Do not put red herrings in games. No. Players confuse themselves enough. They don't need any help. They'll create
their own red herrings.
Yeah, that's what Ange said. Ange said, yep.
They do not need any help. And again, you want to talk about pissed off, right? Like, it's fine when somebody writes a red herring into a book, right? Like, that's a beat. Mm-hmm. A player goes down and burns a whole bunch of resources at a red herring. Man, that's Monopoly, that's Monopoly board flipping shit.
I learned my lesson running V&V in college. When we were in college, we played V&V in my room. We had a big cutting board for sewing because it was in 1-inch grids that we covered with contact paper. That was our playing board.
Sure.
And they were trying to track down a villain. And I was tossing all sorts of different ideas at them and so on. And I got up to use the restroom. And I came back, and they had taken dry erase marker and made a flow chart on the table where they had taken every plot hook that I dropped and traced them all back to entirely the wrong villain. They weren't even close. And spent the next several weeks running around chasing down, like, this villain got out of prison and now he's just trying to live his life. And they think, well, that's obviously a ploy. So, and while it was amusing at the time and they all got a kick out of it, at the same time, it slowed the plot of the game down completely. And they were nowhere near they were several weeks behind the campaign. And of course, in college, we have a limited time to play because we had to wrap this up by the end of the semester. Mm-hmm. That's when I learned, I'm like, too many red herrings. Any red herrings are too much.
Red herrings are, we've talked about it before in investigation games. I hate red herrings in role-playing games. I would rather be the consequences of failing something, a check, whatever, is never a red herring. It's always you're still a step behind whatever this mystery is. If you're trying to catch the person, when you get there because you failed the roll, they are already gone, but they've left clues for the next place.
The other problem with red herrings that come up is that players begin to stop trusting information they get. This has been the problem with I'm playing a mystery game right now, about once a month, and to the point where the players don't trust any of the NPCs at all. We just assume that everybody's lying to us and that nobody's trustworthy and that everybody is secretly working for the bad guy.
Yeah, it's the worst, right? Because then you're just like, I don't know, what should we do with this NPC? Murder him?
Yeah, you come very close to. Oh, that's the that's the no hostages rule.
Yeah, exactly. Like, well, we could leave this person behind, but they're probably going to betray us. Let's just put them in the ground. Yeah,
hobo.
Yeah. Well, and it becomes a survival thing, right? Like, it is that thing we talked about in the last episode, right? Like, you don't punish players for that, like, behavior. Otherwise, what you've told them is you've incentivized proactively killing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Question 2.
All right. As a player, what do you do to manage your feelings when you failed in a game? Bob, how do you, as our player?
Yeah. So that it's kind of going to depend on the number and frequency of the failures and whether or not the game has some kind of mitigating mechanic in it. If I'm running through a game and I've got a string of failures and there's no way to mitigate them, there's no fail forward, there's no bennies, and I'm just fail after fail after fail. The dice are just cold for me. I'm going to feel useless. Okay. So, what I'm going to try and do is look to being helpful to other party members. Try and be the flank monkey, just where positioning is going to do anything. I don't have to roll a die. Try and work with the story and the other party members to try and do something that's going to help somebody else succeed. Because I'm clearly not getting anywhere. That's the angle that I would take. Because otherwise, I've had those nights back in the day, and you can come out of a game session just like all depressed and pissed off that, that session sucked. I didn't have any fun. And that's not the way to come out of a game session. You play RPGs to have fun. You want to come out of that session going, all right, that was a fun session. That was good. So if you've got failures and you find a way, if you've got fail forward or you find a way to mitigate them, then you're more likely to come out of it saying you had fun. But if you're sitting there with a string of failures and nothing's happening, I'm gonna look for the other things in the game that will help me be useful so that at least I'm not going to sit in that spiral and just keep going down.
Yeah, I think you've hit most of it right on the head, right? Like, if you're failing, so the worst thing you can do, right, is become the passive aggressive player in the game, right? Because that kind of thing is infectious, right? If one player sours or becomes sarcastic or starts detaching from the game, it'll spread through the other players fairly quickly, right? So, I think that's probably the first part is you got to kind of check yourself, right? Like, you got to kind of check yourself and just be like, okay, I'm on a bad run tonight. And then I think you go right to what you said. What can I do? Like, what can I, if my D20 is just shitting on me tonight, what non-D20 thing can I do tonight? Like, how else can I contribute where I don't have to pick up that, miserable die and roll it? Maybe that this is the night where I really want to just get more into some role play.
Yeah.
Right? I want to dive into a little more role play, whatever. So, but I think really there is definitely, and I wrestle with this at times, checking your feelings, right? So I got to acknowledge, like, okay, not having fun, I can't hit anything.
Right.
But then I also got to be like, okay, what else can I do? Now, I will say this again, right? I don't like playing games that put me into this situation.
Yeah.
So when I look at games, I look at them with an eye towards what if I have a bad night of rolling? What does this game do?
Yeah.
Right? To help that. It's one of the reasons why initially I was pretty skeptical about Cypher, because Cypher is essentially, it's a game based off of like basically rolling a D20 a lot. And over time, I found I liked things about the Cypher system. Like you can control the difficulty level by spending those, your edges, and you have the XP and things like that. And then I was like, okay, this game makes me feel better. 5e has some of the things I like, right? So, advantage, right? Because I can, if I'm having a shitty night of rolling, I can up my narrative game to try to get some advantage.
Mm-hmm.
But like 3e, like 3rd edition is a game that I'm very wary of because I don't like how it handles things. So I'm more, I for my own enjoyment, I avoid a lot of games that don't have fail forward or don't have player failure mitigation. Mm-hmm. So like Chris invited us to play Call of Cthulhu, and I was like, Call of Cthulhu is like a, roll under percent game. For the most part, I loathe this mechanic, right? I love Chris, so I'm playing Call of Cthulhu, but I'm holding my judgment on how I feel about the Call of Cthulhu 7th edition mechanics, right? Because at its core, roll under percentage is not my fave, right? But I think that they've actually packed some rules into 7th that has made that better than past editions. So I'm willing.
Push your luck mechanic will help with that a lot, and so will the judicious use of luck points and difficulty skills. So. Yeah,
so I actually feel better about 7th than previous editions. But yeah, I mean, I'm discerning about that. I pretty much don't play Pathfinder. I don't play Pathfinder. We know I don't play D&D because I just play a bunch of other things, but yeah. I don't like games where I don't have that as a player because I don't like feeling like that. Here's the thing, right? So some people are going to be like, but failures, failing's part of the game, blah, blah, blah. And I'm with you. Failing's part of the game.
It is.
But on one hand, it's part of the game. And yes, that's great. On the other hand, this is my form of entertainment, right? If I want to feel futile and frustrated, I can go to work, right? I could just go to work for that feeling, and they pay me a lot to feel like that. So to some extent, I want my entertainment to be enjoyable. So I need some failure in my game because I want some sense of accomplishment. But I also want to have some hand on the knob for that, because I want to be able to say, like, I want this, like, we're facing off against Baron von Badass, and I'm going to run my sword through him, and I roll the wah, like 3. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to spend a resource to be like, nope, not tonight. Tonight, I'm not taking that roll. Here's my Benny. Here's my whatever. I'm re-rolling this this bad boy. And I am entitled to enjoy my entertainment.
Yep.
So
I am not trying to carry a torch for D&D 5e.
Right.
But inspiration, advantage, disadvantage, and hero points.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? Like,
cover a lot of that now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, D&D's done a good job of kind of patching up what I think was the reason why in 3rd edition and somewhat in 4th edition, I stopped liking D&D a lot. And I think 5th edition has actually gone a great distance to get there. But yeah, this is the same thing, not to get too far off tangent, but this is the same thing where I stopped playing that one mod pack in Minecraft because it was stressing me the fuck out. And I was like, why? Part of me is like, well, you should just overcome this, it's an achievement. And I was like, fuck that. I overcome enough shit in the course of a day. I want some difficulty and then I don't want any more. Anyway. So finish soapboxing that thing. Basically, my bottom line to that is, as a player, I'm discerning about the games I play because I don't want to get myself into situations where my whole night of enjoyment is based on rolling a fucking piece of plastic.
What about you, Jerry?
Well, for me, a couple things. First of all, look at what it is that's frustrating you. For me, like I said, I like D&D. I don't like the all or nothing spell, so I just stopped using them. And once I do that, I'm like, okay, now I've taken that one little frustration out of the game. And with D&D, it's nice because you can use spell slots for those spells to cast lower level spells at higher levels. You can actually make spells more effective. But it's while I joke, I don't like those kind of things. That's fine. There's a way to mitigate that and just say, okay, I'm not going to do that sort of thing and take yourself out of it. But also find a way to look at the story. Work with it, figure out what's going on. Maybe you're not as effective in combat, but you can find other ways to be effective. And don't be afraid to talk to the GM. If you're playing a game and you can tell that everybody's stymied and lost, tell the GM. They may not be aware of it. I've played a couple of story mystery games where it's fairly obvious the GM thinks that we've got an idea what's going on, and this actually hasn't been a D&D thing as much as other game systems. And we've seen, the GM we have to tell the GM, you know what? We have no idea what's going on, flat out. This is fun and all, but we have no idea what's going on. We don't know. None of the clues are panning out. We don't have anything, and the GM has to stop and tell you, oh, you forgot this or that. And when all else fails, do things that don't require dice. Do support maneuvers. Ask questions. Role play harder. Share inspiration if you've got it. Figure out what else you can do in the game. More and more games these days have a support, assist, whatever mechanic that can allow you to do things. And a lot of them have ways to do that in a way that can be fun and creative. You can't hit anything tonight in D&D. Great. Go help somebody else do something and be creative about it. Don't just walk over there, pick up a table and throw it at the bad guy. The GM may give you not only that nice little assist bonus, but might give you inspiration for doing something kind of cool. But basically, figure out what it is that's frustrating you and find a way around it. And also do something else that's fun for you in the game that also helps the party. Whenever you do something different, make sure it's also helping the party and having other people have fun. So, all right. Phil, what about question 3?
Yeah. I was just going to say, I think we had some decent overlap on that one. And I think on question 3, we have a lot of overlap. So I think that one of us will answer this and the rest of us will just mostly agree with it. So I'll kick it to you, Jerry. What are your favorite game mechanics that make failure in games less painful? Are there deal breakers, as if in a game doesn't have X mechanic regarding failure, I just won't run it?
Well, first of all, if a game doesn't have X mechanic regarding failure, I'll just jam it in there. I am less of a rules purist than some of the other GMs. I'll drop rules out and do things whatever it takes. But basically, my favorite mechanic is fail forward or fail with consequences. PBTA is probably the great granddaddy of doing this properly. But Blades in the Dark does this. The One Engine, Trophy Gold does this very well. But other games use this as well, and it's easy enough to incorporate into existing games that are out there. Put this in the games like Dungeons & Dragons or Barbarians of Lemuria, Savage Worlds, and so on. And a great example of this, and to kind of pimp up a couple other podcasts, if you go back and listen to the Knights of the Night actual play where Brett was doing Streets of Avalon, at the end of every episode, he talks about some of the rules he did, and he discusses how he used the partial success and fail forward mechanic in his D20 games. And it's a great example of a very simple way to basically blend D&D 5th edition with PBTA and other games like that. And also hear about a great game that just happens to be made by a really good game company. So, Bob, you want to add anything else in there?
Not really. I mean, you pretty much covered it. Like Phil said, we overlapped quite a bit on this question. It boiled it down very well.
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add to this as well, right? Like, fail forward for me is almost always the thing I either want to see or, like Jerry said, if I don't see it, fail forward is easy enough to create by changing the stakes around a roll, right?
Absolutely.
And our episode on stakes, we talked a lot about that, but by simply changing the stakes around the roll, like the difference between do you pick this lock or not, as compared to do you pick this lock before the guard patrol arrives or not, is a big difference. And that's a lesson I actually learned from Burning Wheel. I had never run Burning Wheel, but when I was reading it to learn it, this was a thing that Luke Crane had kind of emphasized in Burning Wheel, and this is where I kind of learned it from. But it is a very simple way to put fail forward into a game without having to actually make mechanics for it. So yes, I'm with Jerry. If I like a game enough, if it doesn't have it and I've chosen to keep reading the game, then yes, I will just go ahead and I will just amend that into the rules myself. Jerry, of the list you mentioned, the other one I would have said also is Fate. Fate has Succeed with Consequence.
Yep.
Yes.
And I like, and Succeed with Consequence is fun. I've had a lot of fun using Success with Consequence in major and minor consequences in Fate. So yeah, I think that covers it. I think we've covered a lot of our. I think we trucked over this topic pretty well.
Yeah.
All right. So that's our discussion about failure. And now that the cat is crawling on my lap, let's go and check one more time in the chat room.
Yes, the chat room was very happy to see Cy show up. It's always good to have a podcat. Podcats are good. There's also a lot of agreement with some of the stuff that we've been talking about. Another common thing was definitely make sure that you're reading the table, because sometimes just reading the table for a moment will give you that insight into, oh, that player is frustrated as hell right now.
Yeah.
So taking the time to read the table is never a bad idea. Do it periodically. And you will notice things very.
And
as a GM and as a player,
Yeah.
you see somebody who's having trouble in the game. As a player, you can do some of these mechanics that let somebody do something cool. Somebody rolls really badly, give them your Benny, give them your inspiration.
Yep.
Spend your action giving them another chance to do something. Nothing wrong with being a proactive player to help move the fun around for somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely have in a narrative way, if I've read the table and somebody's frustrated because like they can't land any rolls or something, I've diverted opponents from them, or I've had opponents I've had monsters run off. Like, you can change, again, the stakes of the combat, right? Combat doesn't have to be to the death if everybody's not rolling well. Like, sometimes I'll have a monster be like, oh, no, we need to gang up on the fighter because the player who's playing the fighter's like slaughtering it, right? And the person who's playing the cleric can't hit anything. So then I'm like, yeah, this monster, the monster runs off to, help gang up on the fighter.
Especially if it's an intelligent creature.
Yeah, if it's an intelligent creature, it makes
that
perfect
fighter,
sense.
We need to gang up on the fighter because the fighter is the most damaging one right now. This cleric's
Exactly.
not a threat to me. I'm going to go gang up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you got to do it in a way that doesn't make the player feel inconsequential, right? Like, you can't just have, like, in the middle of the combat with no reason, like, the monster's like, you're not going to hit me anyway, and, like, walk off, right? Because that won't make them feel well.
No.
But if, like, the fighter has murdered, like, 3 opponents, like, having him draw off a bunch of other ones to take him down makes perfect sense for an intelligent creature.
Yep.
And it gives the cleric, like, for instance, in this case, the cleric, it gives them some breathing room where they're like, oh, okay, well, I'm not in combat, because sometimes, depending on the rules of your game, you don't want to withdraw from combat because you don't want to take the free hit.
Yep.
Right. So you're like, well, I'm in combat, guess I'm staying. So now that you've like let the creature withdraw, now the player who's playing the cleric can be like, well, since I'm not actually under direct fire, now maybe I'll just cast Bless or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And get that, and do that.
Change their options.
Exactly. Yeah. So
this is also why it's always useful to have a fairly meaningless NPC in the party that can do something to help. All of a sudden they flake to give that character who's feeling something, or they make a suggestion, or they distract or do something that lets the player make another choice without actually taking the choice away from the player.
Yeah.
So.
A couple people in the chat room brought up some good points with regard to reading the table. Chromatic Chameleon made an excellent point that even the best GMs sometimes have a hard time reading the table. So it's not an automatic.
No.
But if you don't do it, then you're not going to get any information. But yeah, it sometimes can be difficult. And Evil John made the most excellent point of, we're in a tabletop online world right now, and when you're online, it's even harder to read a table.
Oh, yeah.
Because you've got little windows into these people's worlds. You can't see all of the body language all the time. You can't, the big picture isn't really there. So
I want the equivalent of the Texas de Brazil token.
Yeah.
It's on green, by all means, keep pushing my character around. And when I flip it to red, go push on somebody else's character for a little bit.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea.
I would also be in favor of you're beating on me, and as long as it's on green, just keep feeding me lots of meat and I'll be happy.
Yes. Yes. Oh, man. We should just jump to the conversation corner.
Yes,
I'll lament about Texas de Brazil as soon as we get to the right segment of the show.
All right, where's my bumper for the conversation corner? Boom, 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 boom. Yay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we were, so we went into lockdown on I went into lockdown on the 16th, right? On my way, it was Monday the 16th.
Yep.
That weekend was Bob's and my birthdays, and our plan was to go to Texas de Brazil to have delicious meats, and many of them. And we nixed that plan as things were locking down. And when this is over, man, we're gonna have to go and we're gonna have to go celebrate. We have to go celebrate our birthdays and hit Texas de Brazil up. It's going to be a little while before I'm like, oh, cool, let's go sit in a giant crowded room of people again. I feel like there'll be a progression towards that. Not right away. But yeah, that is a thing I miss.
Yep.
I realize, I think the thing I realized, I had therapy last week. I think the thing I realized is I'm mostly okay, but the distance for me from being okay to not okay is a lot shorter. It's a lot shorter and more tenuous than it normally is. I'm mostly okay, but one or two things go wrong, and then it's this all sucks. It happened to me on Sunday. I just was I was going to do some stuff, and then I didn't do anything. And then I was laying on my couch, also not doing anything.
Yep. And
then finally I was you know what? I got to just get up and drive. I got in the car, drove for a while, and I was okay, just the change of scenery. And I was all right, I'm fine again. I'll go back home and have dinner and stuff and whatever. On a lighter note, some fun things I have been doing. I played Illimat. I think I played it early. I played it just after the show last week. I played Illimat. That's Keith Baker's card game. Have you ever seen it?
I've heard of it. I don't remember.
It is fantastic.
Wow.
It is. It's a fun game. It's quick. It will take me minutes to teach you guys, and it'll be the kind of thing after you've played it once or twice, you'll be oh, you'll start to see the depth in the game.
Is that the game they based part of Skyjacks on?
Yes.
Okay.
In Skyjacks they play Illimat, I think. Anyway, it's a lot of fun, and it's a little game. It's little form factor. Like I could dump it right in my bag. It plays relatively quick. It is fixed though. It only plays 2 to 4 players. Like that's it. There's no upper. It's just 2, 3, or 4 players. That's it. But totally fun. So I played that. I also got into playing the Mario Kart app. What is it? Mario Kart. I forget what the name of it is for the iOS. It's on Android too, I think. Whatever. It's Mario Kart. Because my kids are playing it. And you can play local multiplayer. Except that my kids have been playing it for like weeks before I have.
So they whooped you.
Whoop is not even... It's not even funny. It's not even like they have just better gear. Like way better gear. Like I was racing my ass off to like just come in third. Like, and there were only 3 of us in the race, right? Like, and they're, they're brutally competitive where I'm not. So like they had a blast kicking my ass in this game.
Kind of like Dante versus me on Rainbow Road.
Yeah, except like imagine every race. Like, and then add Rose in as well, because now she's like also ecstatic. So I'm grinding on this game to try to get better gear, but like they're gonna have to give up on this game in order, or I'm gonna have to go spend some cash, which I don't want to do. but
wouldn't be the first time you did it though.
No, but I mean, like I looked at the numbers on this game. Like you can't spend a little cash to get decently ahead. Like you got to put down some buckage, and I'm like, not for this game. Like if I'm gonna go blow some cash on a game, and I'm going to, it's gonna be Factorio. Schmitty started playing it. I started watching some videos about it, and I'm like, well, fuck. Like this game looks amazing. Like I really want to go play this game now. So I will probably start playing Factorio on the side. I'm playing some Minecraft. We're all playing some Minecraft. I progressed really fast in this last pack. And I'm like, Andy and I are going to do some stuff to kind of finish out Botania. But like, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I may switch out to another mod pack or something for a little while. I may play a little FTB Academy or something. Just because like I kind of ran through all of our technology. I haven't dabbled much in Magic, and I guess I could try, but Magic's never really been my my favorite in Minecraft. I like technology, which is the reason I want to try Factorio, because it's like all technology. It's like technology, logistic. It's all my bullshit rolled up in one. So, but like that shit is crucial. Like I wasn't playing Minecraft for a little while, and like I was kind of like fucked up over the week. Oh, I know what it was. I had problems playing Minecraft over the weekend because I tried playing this mod pack that like fucked over my machine. And it took me like 2 nights to kind of sort it all out. And then even then, the mod pack never played right. So then I was just annoyed, and I realized like I can't have my main source of spoons in the evening be a program I'm frustrated with.
Yeah.
Like, in the past, spending 2 nights to hack something together to get it to run, I would consider that like a badge of honor or accomplishment. But like right now, I'm like, no, I don't need to be burning those spoons. Like I could do other things for that. So anyway, I'm gonna play some Minecraft for a little while. I'm gonna play some Factorio soon. Got to run Trophy Gold. Played some Mario Kart. Cooked and ate some kick-ass food this week. Being locked down means that we're cooking a lot at home and cooking some delicious, delicious foods. So I am having a serious hankering for Five Guys burger and fries and a shake. I'm going to scratch that itch, I think, this week, but yeah, I kind of want a burger and fries. That's me. That's me. That's all I got. How about you guys?
Yeah, I've been since I finished up Picard a while back, and all the CW shows are pretty much on hiatus until right before the end of the month. I've been kind of picking up other things here and there. I've been having a problem with Tales from the Loop. It's interesting, but it's I don't know. It's just not doing it for me.
It's not engaging.
It's not engaging, and there's been a couple of episodes that really pulled me down, and I'm like, I need to stay away from that. It's so damn slow. Every episode is like 15 to 20 minutes too damn long.
Yep.
They have so many scenes where it's just like, what is the purpose of this? Nothing. Like, cut 15 minutes out of this episode. So I've been kind of picking up other things, and I've started flicking through some of the new stuff that's out. And I watched the first 2 episodes of the new sitcom called Broke. It stars Paulie Perrette, who some of you may know from NCIS.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. It's an interesting premise that's completely like fantasy. Like she's
so was NCIS. So.
Yeah, she's a single mother, and she has a sister who ran off and married a rich Mexican guy who's got a ton of money, and now they spent all the money they had, and the rich Mexican guy's father basically said, I'm cutting you off. So they come to live with her, and they bring along with the husband's assistant, who's a great character. He's awesome. So there's these 3 people that come in, and like a good chunk of the episodes, they're speaking Spanish, and they've got subtitles, and I'm like, cool, I'm down with that.
Yep.
But it's like, you know, like, oh, we're just going to come and live with you. And it's like, that would never happen. She'd be like, fuck no, you're not living with me. It's just not happening. But the kid's cute, you know, and the interaction between the kid and the uncle is really touching. And you know, and I like Paulie Perrette. She's kind of hot. And, you know, I find her to be very interesting in the way she plays this character. And so, you know, I found it interesting. I also watched the first episode of season 1 of The Expanse because people have been telling me for a long time, you should watch The Expanse.
Yeah.
So I finally watched that. Interesting show. I think it's going to hook me. Super hard sci-fi.
Yeah.
So we're going to see where that goes. I was worried about catching up with another show that's like 4 seasons in already. But apparently season 1 is 10 episodes. So it's not like your traditional show. It's one of the more modern, fewer episodes to a season kind of a show. So if that's the case, then I think it'll be less daunting to try and catch up on that.
Like I've only seen season 1 so far and the first episode of season 2. But like a lot of the shows that are out there, all of a sudden in season 3, things pick up a lot. It's episodes 1 and 2 are good. Episode 3 or 4, all of a sudden, a bunch of stuff you've seen gels and comes together. And all of a sudden the show, it was one of those things where I'm like, oh wait, now I'm interested. You know?
Yeah, so they seed some stuff early, and then after a few episodes, they start paying things off.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It's good.
Yeah, so that, and Magnum P.I. finally came back, and they got another episode that punched me right in the goddamn feels. Oh my God. I'm like, really? I'm like trying to watch things that are like enjoyable, and I'm like, okay, here we go. This will be fun. Good Magnum P.I. episode, and it's like, pow, right in the freaking gut, and I'm like, damn you. So let me watch a comedy show. So I watched a comedy special from this very funny Scottish comedian. And I'm like, oh, this guy's funny as hell. I like this. Every once in a while, he's hard to understand because he's Scottish. So his accent's a little thick. But then he gets partway into his show and he drops a freaking gut punch. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I'm like, I'm watching this for comedy. And you punch me in the gut. I'm like, that's it. I'm done for the day. I'm not watching any more TV.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, I'm kind of in the same place. Like, I need my entertainment. I need my entertainment to be unadulterated fun right now. Like, I no fucking depth, no extra feelings. Yep. Like, blow some shit up. Helicopters, explosions, and some martial arts. Layer it all in there.
The other thing that's been saving me is NFL Network. They're still churning along with football coverage and talking about the draft, which is coming up at the end of the month. And they're going to do a virtual draft because they can't have everybody gather together like they used to. And the NFL Red Zone, which is normally an extra pay channel, NFL Red Zone is on for free right now with a replay twice a day, back to back. You get 7 hours of Red Zone football coverage where they show you every time a team gets into the red zone or if something exciting is happening in a game, and they go through all the games as it goes through the day. And they're basically replaying the 2019 season one day at a time. So that's been interesting watching some of that stuff.
I'll tell you what I could watch if I could be let to binge NFL Network. I would watch an endless stream of NFL videos. The old
like NFL film specials and different stuff like that.
Yes. The linebacker. Like, just the, I forget that guy's name, the guy who does
Ed Sable and Steve Sable, yeah.
The linebacker, the, quintessential, and then you hear like the trumpet music playing and, these guys from like the 60s and
classic
70s.
Music.
Oh, I could watch those those things are just,
you can get that fix. For anybody who is a fan of that stuff and a fan of classic games and stuff, NFL, what the hell is the name of the, I'll have to look it up. I'll look it up real quick after I say this, but basically they give you, it's like NFL Game Day. They're giving away until June free access to it. So you basically sign up. You have to, eventually you're going to have to cancel your subscription before they charge you for it.
Sure.
But until June, I think it was, it's free. And you can go watch like the best Super Bowls or the best playoff games. Some of those shows are on. The specials that you're talking about, some of those kind of things. The highlights of particular players, a football life and different stuff like that. So if you're really interested in that, you can go check that out because it's free until June.
I remember when we were living as neighbors, I remember one Super Bowl. In the morning, ESPN played the NFL highlight films of every Super Bowl all day leading up to the Super Bowl, and it was just glorious.
It's NFL Game Pass.
Okay.
So it's Game Pass, all one word, .nfl.com, and they've got complimentary access going on right now. $0 until the end of May. Yeah, May 31st. So it's broadcast replays, condensed games, the all-22 coaches film, the NFL Films Archive, including Hard Knocks, A Football Life, Mic'd Up, NFL Originals, different stuff like that. So there's a ton of content there if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Cool.
So I've been doing a couple of things. Got to play. The only game I got to play this weekend was Trophy Gold, which was a lot of fun. Like I said, the game needs better writing, but the game itself is pretty good. And it was a lot of fun to play, and it's another good game with fail forward. Last week played our Call of Cthulhu Wild West game, which is a lot of fun. Our characters are getting involved in something, and we're not sure what yet. So far, nothing supernatural has occurred except people keep losing their memories. Those of you who follow me on Facebook know that I've been going through Lego set after Lego set after Lego set. I managed to get a couple of really old sets that I never had before and got to build some of those. And Lego therapy means a lot to me. It's because I do a lot of multitasking. I'll watch a movie and put something together and just kind of fills things in, especially on nights when I'm just too mentally wasted to play a game of Minecraft or something. So I finished watching Tiger King and all of its absurdity. And been watching the Clone Wars final season. And the first story arc was really good. The second story arc brought in Ahsoka and immediately saddled her with two really annoying sidekicks. And the show just slowed down. There's literally an episode that starts out with them getting away from the bad guys. They run around doing stupid stuff and end up getting captured by the bad guys at the end. Literally, if you skip that entire episode, the plot hasn't changed. And that story arc has been, I think, 5 episodes now, and should have been 1 or 2. Probably 2. So I think and it's not going good. It's one of those shows that I'm kind of surprised at. But I did start, I know Bob's not a fan of this show, but I did start season 3 of Ozark. And I like Ozark a lot. And it's been pulling me, about 4 episodes into it. And it really dragged me in. I like it's a very Breaking Bad kind of show. So if you like those kind of dark gray protagonist shows, it's pretty good and doesn't have a lot of stupid people who do things that they would never do kind of things. And I like shows like that. Nothing's more frustrating than when a plot point hinges on people acting in ways that people wouldn't normally act. And I like that. And for Easter, we did our traditional thing. We had some fun food and then watched a horror movie. This time we watched The Curse of La Llorona, which is part of the Conjuring series. It was a good, fun movie. It's not super scary, but it's got good characters and it's got a couple good plots. And I'm a sucker for a horror movie with good characters. So it's a movie with, you actually have some investment in the characters. It's a horror movie, so occasionally people do stupid things. There's a few times when you're just like, you know what? That kid's not worth saving. Just let him go. But it's been fun. And this week is going to be the week of gaming, so I'm looking forward to playing games tomorrow night, Thursday night, Friday night, and so on. So just kind of getting through. It's things are picking up, so I'm very happy about that. So how about the chat room? Chromatic Chameleon is doing a Lego Traveler Scout ship.
Nice.
Cool.
Okay, I'm color me excited. So I just got a whole bunch of sets that I bought off eBay that I had to. I run all my Legos. I get those little mesh bags that you put bras in when you wash them, and I put Legos in there and toss them to the dishwasher. So I've got a whole box full of pieces from like 10 sets that I've got to sort out and put together. Because once all of this ends, I've got 2 different Lego-based Savage Worlds adventures I want to run. So we're going to definitely do Lego Agents. So, all right. So that's the end of my conversation corner.
Yeah. What do we think? Roll on over to the end of the show and then hit up the after show a bit?
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Sure.
Patreon shout-outs. Scott Ryder, Sean P. Kelly, Steve Bissonette, Steve Radabaugh, Tad Leckman, T. Kustik, Theodore Atkinson, Victor Wyatt, and Zach Goins. Thank you, everyone, for listening tonight.
If you are free on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's time, you're welcome. Come join us live on Twitch, where you can chat with other listeners in the awesome chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
And if you can't make it to the live show, check out our podcast each week, wherever you get your podcasts. And take a listen to some of the other shows on the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, The FM Gamers, Bone Stone Obsidian, Hannah's Talking Games, The Gnome Cast, Jangu Hustle, She's a Super Geek, and Bonus Experience. You can and should also check out our sibling podcasts, Tabletop Bellhop, Hey Mo, The Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and BS.
After you have failed for the 5th time, and before you throw your dice at the GM, leave us some feedback. You can reach us directly. Email us at mmp at misdirectedmark.com. Check us out on Twitter. The show in the network is at Misdirected Mark. He's Robert M. Everson. He's GM Gerrymander. And I'm that angry guy who keeps posting political trash all over Twitter, DNA Phil. I promise one day that'll probably stop.
Oh, I'm sure. Hey, if you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaigns. MMP, Down with D&D, and Panda Stocking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. She's a Super Geek is at patreon.com/SassGeek. Zhanghu Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhanghu Hustle. And Bonus Experience is at patreon.com/Bonus Experience. Patrons of MMP, Down with D&D, and Panda Stocking Games get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Panda Stocking Games bonus outtakes, and other special releases.
This has been a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. Mic drop!
We out.